All right, welcome back to episode 11 of the Slide In podcast. I'm Braeden Anderson. This is Kelly Gallup.
Hello.
And today's episode is brought to you by the Sex Dungeon. We are currently in the house that the Sex Dungeon built. It's a great fly. Go buy it.
Original Sex Dungeon on the wall. You should take a picture of that.
I'll take a picture of that right now.
Yes.
Slidein.com.
OG. Notice the eyes are back further than the current eyes.
Yeah. Behind the head, huh?
Yeah.
Or underneath. Interesting. So episode 11. Episode 10 was fun. Got into a whole bunch of stuff. We're wearing the same clothes. Kelly put a vest on to try to trick people into the fact that we're not filming them the same day.
Yeah. Part of your freaking job is you should get here early and turn up the heat.
I was made aware of that this morning. I reminded you to eat your yogurt.
I reminded you to remind me this.
Whatever, baby steps. We're heading in the right direction. So today we've got a bunch of fun stuff to talk about. Last week's episode, people were interested kind of about the move from Airflow to Cortland. And so I thought it might be...
I was really amazed at that anybody gave a shit.
People care about, especially about lines. I mean, the line that I...
Care about their product.
They do, yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, they care about what they're fishing. And I think a lot of people have trust in you. You've built this kind of reputation on authenticity in the fly fishing world, whereas there's a lot of sellouts, which isn't, it's...
We're lucky there's no money in this industry. There'd be a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that, you've got this great reputation of authenticity because you try to save people money when you can. I mean, people are buying stuff anyways. It helps when they buy it from us. It helps us do these fun things. But we try to save people money wherever we can. And one of the biggest points, or one of the biggest videos we did kind of around that was that $1,000 rod video. Mm-hmm. That generated a lot of interest from our audience. And I think that's one of the best things we did because it's, you don't need an expensive rod to go out and have a great time fishing. I mean, we've proved that over and over.
It becomes ego-driven at some point.
Yeah, I have more $1,000 rods than you.
There was a study done on that, I think by Sage, and I believe it was a 4-year. This was a long time ago. I'm quite certain it was Sage did it, and they discovered that the number one reason that people bought new rods was because you bought one. Your buddy bought one, and you just keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, keep up with the Joneses, exactly.
I mean, there's very few techie geeks out there that are really looking into what graphite is and what modulus graphite and what resins that we're using. It's just, at some point, how much better can you make it?
You've got one, and they've got a nice marketing campaign.
Yeah. And so... Yeah, but when I was a kid, my dad told me that you build your business one person at a time. And he also told me that you get a chance to sell your integrity once, and the rest of your life it's out for rent.
I like that.
That's a good line.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And so you go, and I mean, my God, at this point, if you can't tell you're getting sold a bucket of shit and you don't know it, then maybe there's a market for you. But I mean, it's like, how many times can we tell people, I mean, anything. I don't give a shit if it's a rod, a reel, a fly line, a lead. There's a certain point where the truth doesn't kill you.
No.
And it wasn't like we shit on another rod. We just said that these other rods were good. And it's that truth, and it was pure truth. It was just not that, maybe this rod is better, this or that. And first of all, you got to be that cat. You got to be you. You got to be able to cast you, Bruce Richards, Ray Jeffs, Gareth Jones, guys like that. The average cat's not going to, like skis. You're a big skier. I skied for a lot of companies when I was a kid. And how is it that you can jump from company to company and you still ski just like you ski?
Right.
At some point, I had a buddy in high school, Nick Nixon, one of the greatest. He was the best skier in our region, so good, right? And he's on the cover skiing. I've talked about him before. He says, super handsome cat. And I swear to God, you could have gave him a pair of wood skis without edges, bear trap bindings, and he'd have kicked everybody's ass anyway. He's just that good, right? And so, but if you took the average really good skier and just jump skis, identical ski, could you really tell the difference? In about a half hour, that guy's going to be better than you again, just because he is. And then Dave Ellis said to me once, that's on one of our videos, I said it when I asked Dave, who's, in my opinion, the best fly angler that's ever lived. And that's a bold statement, but I mean, just everything about him. And I said, Doc, what do you think about this? I forget what rod. It was a new Sage, and he was past the hype shit, right? He was past all that. He'd pick one up, and he'd cast it and say, I like it. And I said, what do you think? He goes, I think that if the rod makes that much difference to you at this point, you're not who you say you are.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
You don't need, he said, you should be able to cast a stick and fish it just fine.
I mean, shit, have you seen flip pallet cast without a rod? I was trying to do that while we were waiting for our seaplane to come pick us up in Alaska. It's pretty hard.
I watched Lefty do it.
I can get it going
I think
forwards.
Lefty taught him how to, I don't know, one of the two taught him.
I think Lefty was the,
But he was the first one that you would see at the show. I didn't see Flip at the shows that often. He was busy actually doing shit. But that was always the thing. And Lefty's so short, you didn't really see him. You'd see this line going back and forth. And he would with his hand. You know, it's one thing. Flip's a big dude and all that, you know, and badass. And then you see Lefty, a little short guy, and he's doing this thing out there.
I mean, shit, we've seen many examples of it. Same in golf as it is in fishing.
Yeah.
Size and strength don't help you cast far.
No, none of it does. But like you said, the integrity thing, when you just telling people the truth on that stuff, it never hurts anybody.
No,
it just hurts. Like when we talked about that, like I said, the only people that called me and bitched were dealers. And specifically, there were two Orvis dealers and one high-end guy. He wasn't pissed off, but he didn't think it needed brought up, you know.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I don't, you know. And his was very polite, but the other guys were kind of pissed, and
it's all personal opinion, right? Like there's a couple of dudes at the shop, like Jake. Jake really likes nice fly rods. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like anything.
So do I.
Yeah, I mean,
how many do you think I've got?
Yeah.
I've worked for everybody.
I've seen your garage.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you've got $1,000 fly rods that you took fishing, didn't like it, and just threw back into the corner.
Yes. But I've got $1,000 fly rods that I fish a lot, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the point of that was always, in a blind test, and we did this in one of my shops where we had rods, all black, no names, and all the same. They all had the same line, all 8.5/5s, and picked up. And the actual favorite rod, when nobody could tell what they were, because they're all black. We didn't have all the same handles. And Cortland used to have a kit rod. They were the first real kit rod people that it was called a GFL 1000. It came with a rod, reel, line, backing, possibly a box of flies or a box, and a sleep aid. It was a video by Leon Chandler about casting. He was so monotone. It was like, but it was a great package, and it was $70, $65.95 or $69.95 or something like that. And it went in with a Sage, and it went in with I don't remember if it was a Loomis. I can't remember who all we had way back. This a long time ago, 35 years or more ago. And in that realm. And we put those rods out, and we had I'm opposed to distance casting with, in particular, an 8.5/5 weight. It's absolutely stupid to throw a 40-foot cast with a goddamn thing. It's just stupid. You're gonna fish 20 feet away from you. So we had a 30-foot target, I think, 25 or 30 foot. In Michigan, I don't give a shit where you are. It's stupid to think that you're going to take these little tiny rods and jack them out there and fish. You're going to, you're just ego blowing. So we'd take this target and through, and every single person that picked up the rods, and you go through them and tested them, liked the cheapest rod in the joint, which was I think it was a St. Croix back then. I can't remember who made the rods for them, but at any rate, it had, and they all had the same reels too, and they all had the same lines all the way through, 444 peaches, and they all went through, and you would tell, and they're numbered, right? You say, okay, that's this rod, and in the second you would say, everybody without exception, only Dave Ellis knew every single rod. And he just like, oh, that's that one, that one's that one. Freak, right? But they liked the cheapest rod.
Yeah.
And the second you said, well, that's the GLF, that's the kit rod. Well, it is a little soft.
Yeah, right.
You loved it, but then it's too soft, right? And it was like, but in favor of the pre-$1,000 rod, the next rod, it was an SP. It was a Sage SP. Before they went really super fast on all the rods, right, and got crazy on the stiff stuff. It went from that to that instantly. But it was going to no matter what, because if you would, that person that's coming in there is coming in to spend the money for a rod.
Right.
And they want that Sage. They wanted that because that was the highest priced rod, I think, then. The SP was spectacular. I wish I'd never got rid of that. But that was number 2. And as a sales technique, all I had to do is say, that's the cheap one and that's the good one, and everyone bought that one.
Isn't that funny? It's just a weird window into the human psyche of...
People like nice things.
People like nice things, yeah.
I was looking at knee braces last night, right? And I'm looking at these things and I'm like gravitating right to the $300 ones when there's ones that look right beside it for $90 and I'm like, well, it's got to be better.
It's more expensive for a reason.
It's got to be better, right? It's my knee.
The quote that we always see, we see it in comments a lot whenever we do rod stuff or casting stuff. It's not the archer.
Yeah.
It's not the arrow, excuse me. It is the archer. It's not the arrow.
Yes, it is the archer. And that was to Dave's point. It doesn't matter. I mean, Michael Jordan could have been Michael Jordan in a pair of flip-flops.
Yes.
Right? I mean, because you wear Michael Jordan shoes does not make you Michael Jordan or ski. And I'm not Billy the Kid, right? And that was a great skier, you know, Nick Nixon, my buddy. I don't give a shit what ski you put under me. I'm not Nick Nixon.
You could put Scott Schmidt in 220s and have me on the best whatever modern ski, and I'm not Scott Schmidt.
Yeah,
I'm close.
And he could have had screw-in edges.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't grow up with those. They'd fall out on you.
So back to this $1,000 rod thing. I mean, I feel like our business, the Slide In, we've kind of made it our mission to try to help people save money. I mean, and there's sort of an interesting dynamic where a lot of time people don't come out to these shops to buy expensive rods. They buy their expensive rods wherever they live. Then they come here on their vacation.
Almost non-existent to this point to buy destination shops selling.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of the same thing with waiters for a long time before the online business, and you know, so we
and you know, as when I first moved here, it was quite contrary. It was, and I did it myself, owning a shop. It was you went west to or destination like they had something special,
right? And
you did a lot. I did it. I'd come out west just because it just seemed like there was a lot more of them, and so it was just the cool spot to be.
Yeah.
And so you'd come out and buy it here, but that went away as soon as the internet showed up and people started realizing, oh shit, they're all exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
like most of the rods I sold when I was working in here were people that had broken their Sage or their G Loomis or their Scott, whatever.
And that was another thing that happened when we put this ridiculous, there's one I'd love to rant for about 2 hours, but Gary Loomis already did it. The stupidity of putting a lifetime warranty on a freaking piece of graphite that's as big as a freaking hair. Are you shitting me? And then you watch people.
What was the commercial, the Orvis commercial about the dog?
They're the ones that started this stupid shit.
Yeah.
They started the 25-year unconditional. Unconditional is absolutely stupid. What does that mean? And I mean not from a retail perspective, because I mean that was stupid for that, but I mean just from life, you're never responsible for anything. So their picture was a freaking golden puppy eating the handle off of it. It says no questions asked or some stupid shit like that. So now you've got something that's it's a precision tool, and you're saying it's okay.
Yeah, be rough as you want.
I had a guide break a rod and send it back, one of my guides, and I said, you do that again, you're fired. You're a goddamn thief. You are a lying thief when you do that. That wasn't the company's fault. Now you're just a piece of shit, right? My favorite one that I sent in, and I worked for him then, Sage, one of my horses bit, I had 3 rods sticking out the back of my truck, all like this kind of together. And this Charlie, my walker, or my Rocky Mountain when he's a baby, walks up and he smells them, and I'm like, and he goes, and he breaks all 3 rods, and there's 3 pieces.
Right.
There's the rod, the middle, and the tip section. Yeah. And I sent him back to Sage, not asking for it. I says, if you can tell me how these things, I'll buy new ones or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, tell me how these rods got broke. And they couldn't even, I says, my horse ate it. And so, but that was another part is on high-end equipment. And I think it had a little to do, the other one's TFO coming onto the market, but I think when people got West, they brought their good stuff, and now you know you're going to send that back. Well, why would you buy 2? Right. I've had one customer that came in and broke it, knew it, and he said, I don't give a shit, give me my rod back. I want that rod on the shelf. It's one of JT's customers. He says, I don't want that damn piece of shit. He says, give me that. I want the one I had in my hand. And he could afford it, right? So, but then I think the popularization of the Korean sticks when TFO started, and then TFO, Reddington, some other one in there, I think, for a while. And then, but those were the 2 big ones. When they came on, and it was really your generation of kids, that's what we saw it. We saw them walk in and they'd want to buy a streamer rod, right? And I'd say, what do you got now? I got this TFO. And they'd like drop their head like they got caught smoking or some shit. And I said, well, they're great rods. Which one do you got? I said, And as soon as you told them that, I'd be like, what? There's nothing wrong with that rod. It's a great rod. I said,
goes back to the price point thing.
Yeah.
You think you got something that's
then
rate.
Your generation came along. We've talked about this with other shit too, but your generation came along and they weren't buying into the BS. They weren't buying into the advertisement. These companies think that somehow their advertising actually sells. The internet is out and people are talking and people talk to each other. And people as a whole, especially your generation, I'm talking 10 years ago, it started with you when you were 18, right? And so it's been a 10-year transition where the information highway comes out. They aren't necessarily believing this old bastard behind the Kelly behind the thing. They want to touch that and go, I don't feel, and I had so many people your age say to me, I don't feel the difference. And that's where you get a chance to sell your integrity.
Yep. Because
you can say, well, you grow up a little bit or some bullshit line, or you can say, that's because there isn't one. And then you go back to my dad saying you build your business one person at a time. Now, you can try to sell that bill of goods that rod is going to last longer, make you cast better, but we know that's bullshit. And so it's if you like it better. It has nothing to do, and it doesn't mean that they aren't good. We never said that. We never said the $1,000 rod wasn't good. But kids your age were coming in particular, there's other studies been done on rod sales about, like, I remember Orvis did one, said that their average customer was 63, I think, or 4. Brian, I think, told me, and already had like 20 rods. Well, probably not needing a whole bunch more. But then you come along at 18, get sold a bill of goods, that bastard oversold me. Or Gallup said there's not much difference. Go back to the blind test. Everybody liked the cheapest rod. Or the day that you picked up that TF or that Echo kit rod and outcast the world champion and stuff like that, and you start going, and then the kids are more like, I don't get it. So I could get I could get 3 rods and a reel and a line for this rod, and that's supposed to make you a difference. And then you go out and you're truly only casting 25 or 30 feet. And once you get past that freaking who's got a bigger thing out in the parking lot, the whole locker room
That's
shit.
My favorite thing, though.
And they're out there and they're humping it, and then they go out and they start fishing. They're from here to there, and they're like, wow, they really, huh.
Yeah.
And it's just, people quit doing that. My generation still buys into it, I think, a little bit. I think we don't go in. It's like amazing when I'm talking with you or Johnny or Matt or whomever, and I'll say something, out comes the phone, and I goes to Google. Sure, we were doing something with my accountant, Brad, the other day, and Matt instantly zips out, and he goes, oh, you must be under 50, you're a Googler. He goes, yeah, we don't do that. So people have so many options to view the truth.
Yeah, you don't have to believe the person in front of you spinning this potential web, right?
And so it gets a lot easier to not lie about it.
Yeah.
In any aspect of our world.
Yeah, you're going to get fact checked.
Yeah.
So you might as well be honest.
Well, I mean, and like I said, you build one customer at a time. If you're bullshitting people, and if you notice, the people that are bullshitting you, it's repetitive. It doesn't, at some point you can't believe anything they say. And so that's not a good place to be in our industry, because you make your living in the fly fishing world by, at least I do, and the reputable people I know. I watched this thing, digress a second. Everybody knows I love bass fishing shows. Kevin Van Dam's one of the greatest, winning wise, he is the greatest in history and probably never be caught up to. He just retired a couple weeks ago and started, and now he's doing fishing. And Mel and I are watching the show, and he says at the end, he says, I've always had this passion to teach. And I've said that. When April asked me, what do you want to be known for when you're dead? I said, being a teacher, a good teacher. I mean, that's why we do this shit. It's not ego. We sure don't make enough money to do it, to make it that. So and Kevin Van Dam has made more money probably than all fly fishermen combined in their history in 1 year.
Right.
I mean, there's just so much money in that industry. And here's a guy who's humble enough to, I mean, he's got to be worth, tens of hundreds of millions of dollars, and got a career or a lifetime income from all of his product endorsements and all that. And he's starting a TV show to teach people how to fish. That's a legit cat. That's somebody not.
No, that's cool.
He could be living on his own freaking island somewhere.
Yep.
Right? Instead, he's starting this show. So now, at some point, I would think money not that important after X amount, and all you do is this, right? Yep. You don't need any more. Can't buy any more houses or boats or cars, and so then you go, and he wants to do it for sure, for real. And then when he said that, he's just sitting in a lawn chair, sitting like this. He just finished the show, and he says, "I've always had this passion to teach people. I'm hoping this will be a great platform." Mel goes, "That sounds just like you." I thought it was really cool. I says, "Well, that's what I've always said. I don't think people believe it, but I mean, it's first of all, why is he teaching?" But it is. It's just, and the whole fact checker thing and teaching, blah blah blah, integrity. It all goes back to getting your customer one at a time. I don't know where we started with that rant, but it is that you just don't get a chance to. It spreads like wildfire.
Well, I mean, one negative review spreads 10 times as fast as a positive one.
Yeah,
right?
And they should.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you should expect to walk in and get the truth told you. 'Cause that used to be one of my, you want to see somebody get angry in a hurry. When people would walk in, I've got, we'll have 60, 65 people an hour walking through here in the summer. And it's just going, you've got to keep moving, right? And you're moving. And that when the guys would walk in and you'd say, what do they hit? Now we sell a lot of flies, right? And it's not like they run out. You can go in the back and see the every bin's got thousands of bins behind it, so
I
we can't run out. And so they're continuously filled.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, one of the guys' jobs is to count those flies all day to make sure nobody's running out. And you would say to someone, you know, what do I need today? And it's almost like it's a preemptive thing that they know they're going to get lied to or something, right?
Yep.
And you go to him and the bin's full, and he goes, oh, can't get rid of those, huh? Man, you want to just, it's like,
makes my blood boil.
Just take a knee. But it's like, why? And I got to the point where it offended me enough that I'd say, look at him, I'd stop everything and say, what possible good would it do to me to lie to you? I mean, if you don't go out and catch fish, where are you gonna go? Not to me.
Right.
I said, you know, and it's like, but I get it. You're used to
the used car salesman giving you the lemon.
You're used to it, or you're used to walking into stores where you don't believe anything they say anyway, you know?
Well, it's like when it's both offended me, and then, you know, when people are kind about it, kind of the same dynamic when people think that we work on commission in here.
Oh yeah.
And like, you know, I was checking one guy out.
I'm not sure there's anywhere that does that.
Some ski stores do.
Do they?
Yeah. There's ski stores that do. There's also there's a lot of different industries where they do. Yeah, but you know, I never
really thought about it like that.
I remember, you know, I was helping somebody pick out a rod, and they went up to check out, and I bounced off to go help somebody else.
Oh, I remember that.
The guy came back and he goes, hey, do you want to come check me out so you can get commission? And I kind of like, I didn't mean to, but I kind of like laughed. I was like, oh, no, we don't get commission.
It was a different one then, because this one, the guy came up and said to me, I don't know if it was you, I just assumed it was me. He said that, hey, I was working with him, I'm gonna make sure he gets his commission. I said, well, go to another store, because he doesn't get it here. I get his commission.
Yeah. Well, and then, you know, like we to make it fair amongst all the employees, when somebody does want to tip us for helping them out, we put it in the beer fund. Mm-hmm. And then we had quite a beer fund going for a while.
482 or something?
Yeah, well, I think it got up over $1,000, but
when I found it.
We did a pretty good job this summer.
We still have it.
Yeah.
I still have it.
Yeah, there's still a bunch kicking around.
Yeah.
So
where did that start?
$1,000 rods.
That's not where it started.
Oh,
you said something. Go ahead.
Customer service, something.
No, it had something.
Well, so then the $1,000 rod thing, in defense of those rods, oftentimes the componentry is going to be much nicer, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
The Berkheimers, you look at those.
We made an exception on that, on Berkheimer rods, because
they're handmade.
Well, they're all handmade, but there's a different level of handmade. There is a
craftsmanship.
It's a small family owned business. It's not 500 employees running rods. Right. You know, you got half a dozen people in there doing this stuff, and there's a different deal there.
Yeah.
But in componentry wise, so I don't care how much, you could not justify in all componentry.
No.
Not $100. There's nothing there that could do it. And so, but there is the hand rolled, hand signed, you know, that kind of thing.
They are works of art.
Yeah.
Like, they are gorgeous rods. It's like the Red Shed specials. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, they've got the jungle cock in them. Like, that's cool. They're sold there, right? And people are willing to pay for that, and you know, there's no shame in that. But the math I did was, you know, when I was getting into fly fishing and all of a sudden realized that, there's not a do-it-all rod, that these are all specific tools, and that you need a lot of them if you want to fish a lot of different ways. I figured that, well, I could buy one $1,000 rod, or like you said, you can get 3, maybe 4 other fly rods, and spend your money elsewhere. And 2 rods, 2 reels. Yeah, exactly. 2 rods, 2 reels, and 2 lines.
I was thinking about it when we were talking about this. I remember, can't remember which dock it was in Traverse City. Traverse City has the highest golf course per ratio, I think, in the country. It's really close to always Michigan. It's always Michigan, Arizona who has the most golf courses. Yeah. Traverse City was always popping up new ones, and the Bear, this giant thing, expansive deal. But how often, it was funny how people valued certain things. They would take Now, I'm pretty certain that a single club could be up to $400, right? And so back then...
Oh shit, now you could be $800-900 with custom shafts and everything.
I just remember this guy pulling in, and he's got his clubs in the truck, or in his car, I mean, it's a two-seater. And comes in, and he was kind of, he's a different guy. He's fun, but and he comes in and he's bitching about this fly rod being, back then it was the SP, and I think it was 6 bills or just shy of that. And he's a notorious club hucker, or hitting the ball cleaner with the club and just smashing his shit, right?
Yep.
I said, let me get this straight. It's $150 a round to go up to the bear and walk around in circles. And each one of those clubs is $400 or $500. You throw them into the ponds all the time, and I've heard about you throwing them at trees and other shit. When's the last time you did that with this $400 or $500 fly rod? So you've got 10 fly rods in the case, which you will willingly throw into a pond or throw at someone, and this fly rod you will have for your life, right? That's the difference. And so, but it's just about where you throw your priorities, right?
Yeah, what you really value. Yeah.
I went through that serious expensive rod, buying into it for a long time. I mean, and reels. Boy, reels I got sucked into big. And then I realized when I started fishing, I caught just as I was thinking, I got a picture of me and Billy Robinson fishing, my buddy. And we had these Martin 72s. We thought we were just high cotton, man. They were like $40. They're 3-to-1 ratio, shitty drags. Hell, we caught more fish on those things. And then, of course, you get into the super high dollar reels when you're a big shot. And so I keep looking at my Martin 72. I caught a lot of fish on that.
Yeah, I think the expensive reel thing's a whole nother ball game. I mean, you can really spend a lot of money on reels. Those Ables that are being custom hand painted now get well over $1,000.
I think it's $1,000 for the paint job. But I kind of at first I was just talking to somebody the other day about this, about that paint job, and the way I understand it, because right when it first started, those were there was 3 or 4 kids that were doing it, and they were street artists, is the way I understood it. And they hired these graffiti cats to custom paint jobs. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
I mean, you're not buying the freaking reel.
No.
I mean, you're buying a paint job. And I know guys that have, Brian's told me about several people that have all of them.
Yeah.
And they just collected every single one of them. And I'm pretty certain the kid, they're not kid, probably they're young men. I'm pretty sure they sign them and stuff like that. And so I thought that one was an entirely different, that's an entirely different thing.
Art.
Yeah. I always thought the reels were too expensive anyway. Then if you're going to have a paint job and it's custom art, at least now I can justify something.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. But I thought it was really cool because I heard there's a great backstory.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you know,
for trout,
what does a freaking trout reel do?
Nothing. It holds line.
It just, so it's a very cool looking reel.
Yeah, I mean, and there's part of that too, right? It's the style part of it. It looks good. It matches your rod. Like some people care about that. I couldn't give a shit. What I like is reels that make noise. Mm-hmm. Particularly when I'm fishing for larger fish.
There is a noise. That's a noise. We did a thing on selecting reels once.
Yeah.
Like one of our first videos about 1,000 years ago. And I talked about a lot of things that I liked about reels. And I don't believe in drag. I think the X pound of drag it's ridiculous. I mean, you're talking trout reels, and it's particularly trout, as in dry fly, nymph. You're running, 4X, 3X heavy. Now, how much drag could you possibly put on the fish? And do you really, if you think drag's what slows your fish down, you're wrong. That is not what, it'll enhance them to turn possibly, but usually they'll fight your drag. If you have no drag, they will not run as far. They will not run. When you grip down on it, if you watch, your fish will pull against you. They're pulling. They don't know what the hell's back there. They're just pulling, trying to get away from it.
We did that in that nymphing episode, where it was you and Johnny. We took the boat from the shop down.
Oh yeah, free spooled him.
Yeah, and you hooked, side hooked one and went way down. Free spool it, turned the thing.
If that fish had been hooked in the mouth, it would have. He'd have turned around half this distance.
Yeah,
he would have. And he might have been in the beginning. Who knows? But but the drag is just so it doesn't overspool. I mean, it's just so crazy to think. I saw this one about some reel, got 14 pounds of drag. That's if you're fishing frickin' marlin.
Yeah.
I mean, you're shitting me? That would drag your ass right out of this river. And so, there's functional things, line storage, whether it picks it up, whether it's a large arbor so it doesn't coil, smoother retreat, release, faster pickup, all that shit. But if you probably didn't see it, but if you watched it, I said, the first thing I do is I look at it aesthetically, obviously. It can't look like, I gotta like something about it. My first thing though is the sound.
Yeah.
I cannot, ironically, I like the sound of Hardy's, which is the tinniest, awful sound on earth. But if you grew up with it, you grew up with it and you like it. But my favorite sound ever was the Ross, the original Ross. And I talked about that in the thing. The original Ross was silent. Didn't do so well. Didn't sell so well. Then they put a drag on it, and if you look at the Delron, the clicker, the thing that engages the back, that stops your free spool and engages the actual drag, and it had this long detent, and so there was like 6 of them, I think. And when you went around, it went sounded like a fluger. That one didn't work either. People were trying to get away from flugers, the best-selling reel probably in history. And then they went to like twice as many of the detents, and it went, and it was just,
it's like a purr almost.
And that's still my favorite sound ever. And they quit doing it. Ross quit. Well, everybody, they had to cool up the reels and make them all look like spaceships now. And so, but that original reel, that's still I love that sound. The Evolution, the original Evolution LT, I think, that one was also very but there's a lot of people who hate it. Right? And so you can't, what are you going to start building reels for decibel? I mean, it's like...
some people hate the loud reels.
Yeah, and you love them.
Well, I like them for the spay thing because it's a feedback, and the funny part about it is when you actually smash drag on a reel from a cast, that's a bad cast. It's way overpowered.
But you like it.
But it's cool. It feels good, and that's why I fish. It's because I enjoy it. And throwing a laser and having it go bzz, it is fun. And then the grab, when they eat something hard and that reel just starts screaming, that's cool.
Yeah.
I bought a Spaco on Facebook Marketplace before I went out steelheading for a few weeks this year. Spaco, sponsor me. Love that reel. And I think...
Is that loud?
It's loud, yeah. It's a dude out of Minnesota, Michigan, can't remember where. Wisconsin, I think. And they're essentially they're Hardy-esque. They've got he calls
in reality, it's really hard not to be somewhat Hardy-esque when you figure how long they've been.
Yes, yeah. It looks like the Cascapedia. Some of their reels look like the Cascapedia, the Hardy reel. The one I've got, it's got the snake roll handle and super loud clickers, but it's a good loud. I like the loud, and the next time I go fish salt, I'm fooling around with the idea of bringing it down there because it's a clicker. There's no drag, and I want to see if I could land a big fish.
My bonefish, I tried that when we still had the lodge in Abaco, and I took a 0 drag, and then I put drag on that would push against my rod, and essentially I would hook a bonefish and just stand there because. What do you do when you hook a bonefish? The sunfish just takes off. It runs 100 yards that way, comes back halfway, and then it goes out 50 yards and it comes back. It does the same shit every time, right? And it's I just stood there. I saw no difference. I mean, they run until they're tired. They're pulling the line.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're tired. They run until they say, okay, well, I'm wondering what's behind me. And they turn around and you reel back, and then they do it one more time, and they come back, and you're like, okay, that was good. Then I put the drag on them. Just more effort on my arm.
They're gonna pull.
I told you, Harry Lemire, one of the greatest steelhead anglers in the world, I asked him once why they what is it, some sort of cult you guys all? So I first met him a long time ago, 30 years ago. And he said, how come you guys all run those Hardys? What is this, some little cult you guys got going on? Because I'm all young, you know, full of piss and vinegar and going to teach the world everything there is to know about it. And he looks at me and he says, well, young man, have you ever realized what happens when you drag on a fish? I said, yeah, I drag that sumbitch back in. He goes, no, you don't. It runs away from you. It's running from the pressure. And the more pressure, the harder the fish, and he's going to turn and go downstream every time. I listened, because he's Harry Lemire. And then immediately left and fished and got out and had my, don't remember what reel it was. Yes, I do. It was a Billy Pate. It was a Billy Pate trout steelhead. And I had my drag set, and I hooked it. It was a dry fly fish, and it comes up and it eats it, and I'm like, poof, and it goes, and it just, you know, it's back in it was single hand 9.5 foot Sage RPL 8 weights, and I thought about what he said, and my fish turns and goes downstream, and I release that drag. That summit's turned around and went right straight upstream. When it didn't feel it, they spin around. And then now the line's below them. Well, they're only running from the tension. It doesn't matter how much tension, they're running from the tension.
Yep.
They got this in their mouth. They don't know it's hooked to you. It's such stupid. To pretend they think that the fish knows what the hell's got a hold of them, and you're 50 feet from it. It's like, you shitting me? You think? You know, so it spun around and went right past me upstream. And I'm like, son of a bitch. Maybe 200 years of Atlantic salmon and steelhead fishing, people figured something out. Maybe Harry knows more than I do. And so from that day on, I set my drag at about just slightly above overspool.
Yep.
And like, I don't like to set up, like I have a tendency to set too hard, too fast. And man, if everything goes wrong, it takes off all at once and you shoot line, that's a kiss of death. But I would set it maybe, I don't even know, a pound more, and frequently would free spool it on the beginning of the fight so the fish wouldn't go below me.
Right.
So now what am I paying for? If I'm not paying for this 14 pounds of drag that I could fish marlin with, what the hell is it for? So then you start thinking, oh, what about my fluger that didn't have any, and I caught thousands of fish on, and then you start realizing you're fishing trout, for God's sakes. And so, yeah. But then audible became really, really huge to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't like noise, in particular when I was guiding, because I didn't need guys. I just did everything I could not to have on small rivers, and like the PM in particular, especially in the early days when it was blowing up. People hear drag and they come to fish and run with you. And it's like, dude, I can't have this shit going. Yeah, I wanted silent reels as much as I could. And at night, I didn't like them either. I did not like the thought of hearing you or you hearing me in an evening on the tranquility of a spinner fall. I did not like being interrupted by a loud reel. But you know, I just didn't know if it would draw you in to see what I was doing, or I didn't like the louder noise at night. I like the world to stay very silent, and it's dark, and even if it's not dark, it's getting there. There's just something about it. I didn't like being interrupted by the noise. But you know.
Yeah, so before I moved out here, I put my drag heavy, you know, of thinking, and it's not crazy. I mean, you thought it too, right? That more drag, harder for the fish to run. You're totally right. They pull against it, and they go down. Yes, they go downstream, which is the kiss of death, because it's really hard to get them when they're below you. But if they go above you, a lot of the time you can get them back, unless you're in a boat. That might be trouble. But one of the things that I wanted to mention for those that may not know, you can leave your drag really light, and if you want to add more drag, just lightly palm it.
A lot of the reels you can't palm anymore, though.
So a lot of them have some sort of way where you can get a finger or something on that spool that's spinning, and it takes such little friction to actually help slow them down. And you know, that's more like trout. They don't really run that hard.
I remember watching people. The one thing I had against palming was, I don't have anything against it, but I saw so frequently most anglers aren't as seasoned as you are, and you would watch people in the early days, and I can't remember what video series it was. It might have been Lonnie Waller and on the steelhead, and he was palming his SA reel, which consistency of the drag is critical.
Right.
If it's coming and going, and one of those SA reels used to have a real problem with going woo, woo, and catching up, right? It was not a high dollar reel. It wasn't. It was just a good reel, but it did have a tendency to come and go. And you'd watch people put their hand, and they would get this stuff going on.
Yep.
And 40 some years of guiding, the number one reason people lose fish, period, end of discussion. Don't give a shit until you've put thousands of hours guiding people. Don't write in and tell me what a dumbass I am. This is what people do. And if they palm it, they'd come down to it, or if they have too much drag, they come down and they go, and it's this fraction of a second thing. They're fighting, and you're like, and this thing about keeping your hands up, such bullshit. This is keeping your hands up. This is it. This is total out of control, and you're about to lose all the shit anyway. This is only if you've got a weed bed you're trying to get something over. That's the only time you should ever put your hand up in the air. Like, you fight right here, and you just keep it in the box. Stay right here. Right here, you're fighting. And people would do this, and what happens in particular with steelhead and salmon is that they get the rod pointed straight real quickly, just enough to snap that line, because there's no shock absorption in the rod anymore. Pow, pow! But the rod always comes back up. It goes, and it's like, oh shit, what happened? So you pointed your rod at him. No, I didn't. You're right. Would you like a cup of coffee with that, sir? Here's your coffee. Never seen, and it's just what it is. But it happens so fast, and it scares me when I watch people palming reels, and because I see this so frequently, up and down. That rod should never move. It should be right here. It should never. This doesn't happen if everything's right.
Yeah. Well, I think it definitely takes some practice to learn the technique.
Cats that know how to do it have been doing it forever, right?
Yeah,
That's different, and they didn't start with dragged reels usually.
Right.
Hardy's didn't have a drag. If you call that little tension knob on there a drag, it's an overspool. That's all it is. Yeah. That's probably, and those cats, and I do it. I fish them. Yeah. I don't tend to do it too much. And here's just a simple idea, a simple tip. If you feel the rod's doing this, you're fighting your fish wrong. Even if it's like, woo, 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 that's different. Like if you're on tight right here and everything, and the fish is shaking his head, obviously it's because it shakes his head one way, it's got to come back the other way. Well, you don't have tension all the time. But you'll know if your rod's dipping up and down, if you're constantly in this, or if it ever does this and then you do that, you are already toast. This is just bad etiquette for fighting fish. You start this crazy shit trying to get caught up. And
the one that pisses me off so much is the teeth. When people start stripping line and putting it in their teeth, that's
so many things that equate to. When we do the seminars, I'm always talking about this. I always say, stay in the box. When you fight, you don't fight like this. You don't put your hand. You don't look at the sky when you're in a ring and fighting somebody. You fight here, right? Mm-hmm. It's called a fight for a reason. So everything happens right here. And the thought that because what happens is the rod goes up and you are out of control. You are toast right now. Everything wrong in the world. And what everyone does, again, until you've guided 40 years and watched this happen hundreds of days a year, the rod goes up, your hand's here, even if you've got your line in your left hand and you're down like this. The first thing anglers do, and there's a second side effect to this too, it's called going out of my boat backwards. They go like this, and then they look up and they reach. Now what the hell's going on? Now imagine you're standing in the ring and somebody's in front of you, about to kick you right in the mouth. And they go like this to get their line, right? But usually what they do is they go whack, and they look up and they take this giant ass step backwards. I've had 13 people go out of my boat backwards. It's like, oh shit, in you go, right? And so, but it's like you set up and you stay here. Anything you think you're going to achieve other than a weed bed like this, or a marl bed, or something where you're like, oh shit, you got to get your line at an angle. But fighting the fish, you've completely lost all ability to bend your rod. First of all, if you think about how your rod's being held, when you put your rod up like this, you aren't bending your rod.
No.
And if you are, you're bending it from the tip down, which breaks rods. And so you're here, so once
you lose all your leverage.
All your leverage, your line control, you watch that shit through the mouth trying to catch it. So even if you get it, now what do? You go for the second one.
Yep.
And it's like, Jesus, it's like eating spaghetti in midair. It's stupid. And so just learn to but if you feel your rod bouncing, if you ever feel that, either your drag's too tight, and it's because you got a shitty drag, or if you're palming, and I usually see people palm reels with drags that they don't need to, and that's when I see that stuff going on. And sometimes it works. Sometimes you have enough tippet or hooks big enough that you succeed. 9 times out of 10, the second that rod goes down and the bend goes out of the rod and now it's pointing at the fish, your line breaks right there.
It's just
it pulls
a little head shake and whack.
Yeah,
pulls out of the skin.
Pulls out
whatever,
the skin, whatever. But it's just like, it's not actually, you're just out of control. And you watch a superstar, you watch a flip pallet, you watch anybody like that realm, you won't see that bullshit dancing around.
No, there's no panic.
There's no panic.
Calm.
It's no different than the first time you see somebody get in the ring. They're covering up and blinking their eyes and closing their eyes, and then you watch
good to look at the person
Merriweather in the ring and you see he's staring at you like, is that what you got? Let me show you how to do that.
I think the other thing about fighting fish that really only comes with time is that you tend to develop a spidey sense for what the fish is going to do. Like, you develop this kind of feel like, that fish, it runs, it kind of stops, there's a head shake, and then it's just instinctual, like that fish is going to go again, or it's going to go do something. And it takes a while to develop that, but that eventually comes.
And you can tell when a fish is going to come up and jump, and you can watch your line and see what it's going to do. There's
a lot of time it's kind of the quiet right before the storm, right? If that fish doesn't move for a second, there may be chaos that's coming right after.
Yeah. There's a million, but that's the whole thing of being prepared for your fight. It's like, what's going to happen, right? And that, again, like you said, it's 100% time on water.
Yep.
You don't get to fight fish the way Larry Dahlberg or Flip Pallet or one of those guys fights fish on your first week, right? You don't get to black diamond your ass off a mountain on your second day. I know you can do it.
Well,
Lots of people
some
do.
People have.
I mean, but you know.
Trial by fire.
Yeah. I had the greatest ski dream last night. Oh, it was great.
I had the greatest ski days. The last few. Yeah,
it was such a great. I was back in Traverse City at Holiday Hills, but it was really, can't remember the big cut on at Jackson. Holiday Hills, this tiny little thing, right?
Yeah.
Tiny. And it was me and Nick Nixon. We were skiing together. We haven't skied together since high school, I don't think. And but get off the little T-bar, right? We're talking to the chick at the bottom on the T-bar, and we got a piece of gum. We're talking. We get at the top. There's like these 2,000-foot coolies, and we're just sending it off these things, just dropping off the tops of these things. It was like, and we get to the bottom, and they're back at the T-bar. If you don't know what a T-bar is, it means it's not much of a hill.
Yeah, right.
But it was
unless you're in Europe,
it was really cool. It was the great snow.
Where were we? Fishing,
drags, reels.
Yeah, I think
flies, designing flies. Oh yes, we need to talk about flies.
We do
someday.
The biggest key to fighting fish, in my opinion, is just staying calm. Like, people panic, and like everything you said, keep it in front of you. I mean, I am also, it's not like I haven't panicked before. I remember the biggest brown trout I caught my first year out here. Salmon flies, 4th of July, you might have floated past us. we might have had a bottle of bourbon in our boat. And
there's other shit in that boat than bourbon.
I don't know what you're talking about. No.
That's the last of the things that was in that boat.
Yeah. We had a good time. We were dancing, having fun. But we landed this. So I hooked this fish, and I didn't even see and eat, right? With those salmon flies, it was tucked way up under a bank. And that fly just disappears, right? It's like gets suctioned down into the water. You don't see anything. All of a sudden, the fly's gone. And Jeremy and Chris really helped me with that. I might have missed 1,000 eats that week until I figured that out. And then, so I
just remembered something from our last one before I go on. Some guy wrote in and said that I threw 13 flies and the fish missed it. If I said that, I apologize. They didn't miss it.
No, that guy misinterpreted.
I might have said it that way. I might have said it that way. They didn't miss the fly. They got crippled flies, and it came up and said no, and it's alive.
Rejections.
Get back to your fish underwater.
Rejections. Yeah.
So you lost your.
Okay, so this fish eats. I set on it and lose the line out of my finger. So I knew I set it good. I stuck her actually. I stuck her, and then lost all tension. And I'm back here, my rod's over here, the line's now wrapped around my rod, it can spin down it. And from the back of the boat, Chris goes, hand line. So I drop my rod, grab the line, and just start pulling the line, and I don't know how the thing was still on there. We landed it, it was, 21 and a half. It was great brown trout. And that, we were just dying laughing, and that's when we were in Chris's boat, which is your old boat, which is, black fly pod, Clackraft. And we're sitting there, music going, which a lot of people hate, but go have fun every once in a while.
That's a good thing.
It's
I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
I always carry.
So
I have a gun just for boomboxes.
Small speaker. But
Aim small.
We're just
hit small.
Yeah, we're having fun, and we see another black fly pod coming down the river. Oh, dog bark. All right, well, we got a little interrupted by the dog, but I think where I was is that, so we landed that fish, we're in a black fly pod, and I didn't know of anybody else with a black fly pod out there. Is that
me?
Well, we see another black fly pod coming down the river, and Chris goes, who the hell is that in another black fly pod? Oh my God, it's Kelly. And we were having a good time over on the bank. So that was a little nerve-wracking for especially Matt and I being new employees. But it was fun.
I would like to follow up on this to kind of make it the fish fighting thing, because I think a couple things that I want to do full-length videos on: reading water and fighting fish. And fighting fish. And again, there's a million opinions on everything, but remember, it's called a fight for a reason. Remember Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon in the beginning of it, and he slaps the kid in the head and he says, never take your eyes off your opponent. That's sound wisdom. In a fish fighting scenario, this is a quick synopsis. If you would do a few things, first and foremost, set with your hand, have your line in your hand. So it's here. Sometimes it slips out. Everybody does that. Mistakes just happen. Then that's when the shit show starts, right?
That's when the fun part.
Yeah. And so, but if you will do what Bruce Lee told you to do, don't take your, and people don't. They do not stare at their fish. That's part of reading water. People don't stare at the water. They see the surface. If you will set up on your fish, and boom, you've got them, right? And you stay in this box. Your hands don't go over your head. You stay here and you stare at your fish. That will stop a lot of your stuff. If you will just stop, if you don't start looking for that's what they look for, their exit. They look, how am I going to get back to shore, right? It's a fight. Pay attention to your opponent. Boom, you set up on them and look at them. And that way, everything happens right here, right now. Set on your fish and watch it. And that first 10 seconds of the whole deal, well, that's what makes you comfortable. That's what being in the ring a lot gets you to do, right? You're comfortable in there. You're watching your opponent. And here you're going like that. And you realize, I do this, I do that. Okay, I got to make up line. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And never take your eyes off the fish.
Yep.
That in and of itself will stop almost everything when you realize nothing really different ever happens.
Right.
It's really all the same shit. One jumps higher, one goes this way, one goes that way. But a lot of people's first inkling is to go to somewhere else on foot instead of fighting their fish. That in and of itself, directing the first 10, 15 seconds of the battle will calm you down. And it always amazes me when I watch people fight fish, in particular as a steelhead salmon guide, which you do a lot of running downstream to get people's fish because they're not going to get it back to you, right? And so, but the idea of landing the fish is so foremost in your mind that you miss the reason you're here. You are here to battle the fish. Right? That's supposed to be the fun. That's why you paid the $1,000 for the rod, yes, and the $1,000 for the reel and the $100 and way too much on Johnny as a guide. And so, and you miss the fact that the entire, it's like being a skier and wanting to get off the lift and be at the bottom and missing the entire run. You are there to fight the fish. Relax. It doesn't matter. Just, the tenseness will lose the fish. But if people can get very used to just hitting, setting up on it, in a boat, they will immediately look at the guide to get the net. Well, geez, I hope it takes more than 5 seconds to land the fish, right? So if you can set it, stare at it, and enjoy it, you will have a lot better chance of landing it.
Yeah.
But if you set it and immediately, man, how many times you watch cats crash in this river? They'll set up and they'll just start going backward, running. What the hell's going on? Give it a minute. Let it happen, right? Don't just run to the bank or look for somebody and start screaming, get the net, get the net, get the net.
I can do this a lot faster. Sorry, not that. Yeah. This a lot faster than I can walk backwards through grease bowling balls.
Well, back to step one. Primary focus. Don't take your eyes off your opponent.
Right.
Look at the fish, set the hook, boom, see what the fish is doing. This is where you're going to learn to fight fish. It's like, okay, there, he's doing this, he's doing that. Bring him this way, continue his movement that way. Okay, got it. Okay, well, I don't need to have to go to the shore. What do you know about that? It's a 14-inch fish, and I just picked him up. And it's like, holy shit, how'd that happen? And I mean, even in a boat, I mean, I started drift boat guiding in the early 80s, and it still amazes me to this day that people hook fish, they're paying me to be in that boat, they go into that panic mode, they do all the other stuff we talked about, but their first concern is saying, get the net. Right?
You've probably netted a couple fish in your day, huh?
Yeah.
Don't you think you know?
I was like Emma says, how about I tell you when we net it? Because they're almost always friends of mine, right? But if you can go from set, look, and enjoy, it's a lot easier. But don't plan your escape route. Again, go back to it's a fight.
Right.
You're going to win the fight. You're not going to run from the fight. Stay in the fight. But you can't stay in the fight if you're not looking at your opponent and you're looking for a way to run out.
Yeah.
Set it, look at it, enjoy it.
I have panicked before, and I always get, kind of jokingly mad at myself, but I have hooked fish, lost tension, get above me, and then just turn around and sprinted towards the bank with my rod up above my head.
You shouldn't tell me this.
I know, but
I really wish I had.
Every time I do it, I haven't done it.
No, you just said you did it again then. That just means you've done it.
I've done it multiple times. But I know it's...
Maybe we were lucky in Michigan. You can't run. Too many trees and shit.
Yeah,
maybe that's what it was.
Bars.
Yeah, it's just like, there's no place to go.
I think I mostly do it when I have a fish eat a fly on a spay rod and immediately comes right at me, and I lose the line out of my hands. And
you should put your. That's another tip I'll give you. This is my best tip for panicked fly anglers, or for seasoned or anybody else. If shit goes wrong with you, if everything, I don't care if your reel falls up. Ever had that happen? I've had it happen 20 times guiding.
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden I hear bloop, and it's like, dude, you don't have a reel. It's like, oh shit, I don't care what's going on. If you put your rod in the water, you're done. Everything's fine.
Yeah, tension.
Perfect tension. When fish jump, this will get a lot of shit. I'll get so many people. They're going to write in and tell me how full of shit I am. When a fish jumps and they tell you to dip your rod at the fish, I personally like to, if I see it come, I like to turn their head midair. But that.
Well, I think that's the difference between trout and tarpon.
No, I've done it with tarpon too. And I've done it with bass, huh? No, I've never caught a 100-pound tarpon. I've never caught a 40-pound tarpon. I've done it on baby tarpon, like 10, 15 pounds. Done it on hundreds of steelhead, hundreds. Midair, just you don't pop it. But I'm not suggesting that. I mean, if you're an accomplished angler and if you just want to try something, I've done it on a lot of videos too. When the fish goes up, and you should be able to tell when a fish is going to jump, if you're a seasoned angler of any sort, and the fish goes up, they tell you to dip your rod, bow to the king, is the original, and that was so that the fish didn't land on your leader and break your leader, right? Our leaders are a little stronger than that for the most part, and physics kind of defy it. That's probably you dip your rod, and most people dip it too long, and now it's pointing right at their fish, and it hits the water and runs, and pow, right? But we won't, that's not what I'm talking about. We're going to get to this in a second. But if you want to try it, watch the fish. You don't pop the fish. You watch the fish. You see him coming up and just push against it. You can turn the fish around. Right, it'll turn right to you, and now it runs right to your feet. They don't have a GPS in their ass. They just go they just go the last place their head was pointing, right? Try it on a small fish. You can see it'll work. You don't pop it. You just go, ooh, just turn their head. It's amazing, and they run right to you. But that's not the point I was trying to make.
Ooh, I like the Go for it.
When the wheels are falling off the wagon, and all shit's broke loose, and you are out of control, and you simply put your rod in the water. Just drop your rod, do nothing. Just put your rod in the water. Everything's fine. The fish is running from the tension on the line. It is not running from you, does not know you're on the other end of it, doesn't know anything other than something's flowing in its mouth. Put your rod in the water. I don't care if it's a lake, don't care if it's a river. If it's in a river, the line will go downstream of the fish, and that fish will go upstream from it. It's going to go away from the tension. And it'll give you a second. If you're a panicker, you're probably never going to hear any of this anyway. But if you turn and run like he said he did, so embarrassing. And so you just put your line down in the water and relax. The only time this doesn't work if that fish is a million miles below you already.
Right.
If you put your line down in the water, it's just not, it'll relax you because you're not turning the fish around anyway. Right. It's going to run for as long as it feels line behind it. So you're pretty toast if it's there. But if like zoom, all that stuff goes crazy, put your rod down. Now, to emphasize that point, way back when, in the 80s, when we did these schools at Ranch Rudolph, Lefty Cray was the head guy then. I think Bruce was number 2. Pete Cross was another guy in this huge school, like 22 instructors. And it was the beginning of barbless. And to put a nail in this, Lefty used to do this thing where he would go and hook a fish on a barbless fly and put the rod down. It's a little trout pond, right? And then they'd go do something. And no matter what, and he came back, the fish is on. And so, because it's perfect tension. When a fish jumps, and that's what I was getting at with the fish jumping, when the fish jumps, the only time it can throw the hook is when it's out of the water. It doesn't throw a hook underwater shaking its head because there's tension on the line. Right. Gets in the air and does that flop its head thing, and you free line it, the fly goes crazy. It can go out, right? And I started doing it way back when with steelhead, when we caught lots of them in the Great Lakes, and particularly get a big push and there'd just be tons of fish. And they would jump and I would pull it at them and they would land and swim right to me, right? And I didn't get that, and I did a lot of barbless, so I didn't get that flopping it off because I pulled tension. But don't listen to that part, because don't write in and tell me how full of shit I am until you've done it yourself. I don't care what you say. I know how it works. I don't care if you're telling me how wrong I am. But if you are a panicker and the fish, just put your rod in the water. just long enough to get like this. Just reel. Don't try to really haul ass pulling the line. The whole thing is composure.
Yep.
Just let it happen. Put your rod down. Set it, look at it, enjoy it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun. The two things I was thinking about, I just wanted to clarify. I think you said it, but wanted to make sure people understood. After every single cast you make, put your fly line back under the trigger finger on your rod hand.
Should never come off of it.
It should never. I mean, you make your cast, you haul immediately back under the finger.
Yeah.
And that way, when you set...
And the entire time you're fishing.
Yes, the entire time you're fishing, retrieving, dry fly fishing, nymphing, doesn't matter what you're doing, because it sets you up to set your hook. And then ideally, like you said, sometimes it happens when it slips, but ideally you set and you're right here. And you're just in control, composed the whole time.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people in the old days, especially on wet fly fishing, and you would see it a lot in the 60s and 70s, where people would do figure eights, retrieve. A lot of lake people do that.
Yep.
And so they're figure eighting, and they would hold it over here.
Yeah.
Usually when I saw it, it's a wet fly thing, so the people they'd hook up and they'd be like this anyway, right? And so, but I would still, even in a lake, I prefer to push my hand out like this, and I'm doing my figure eight behind my finger here.
Behind the trigger
always,
finger.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where it's just control. It is complete control. And if it isn't a habit, when people first start in particular, that's what you see constantly, right? Is that they'll be casting and they'll hold their line here.
And they've got that loop between the first guide and
And that's just experience. It's no different than watching, whatever you watch people when they first start. That's not such a big deal. But if you can get in the habit of always, and I like it to happen very quickly. I like to finish my cast with my hands, they go together when I finish my cast no matter what. And then it's underneath there, because if you get a fish like this, you are probably, the next step is you're going to do this stuff.
Right.
I don't know why our hands go up. Sometimes you set up and there's no curing everything. I mean, a lot of times you'll set up like, whoa, and maybe the fish is coming at you. And
then you're trying to pick
everything's like, whoa, shit. And then, your hand might go up, but if your line's under your finger, you just do that.
Then you can bring it back down.
Well, you do it as one piece, and it comes down, and you're still right here.
It's like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights when he's being interviewed, and he keeps...
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with my hands. They just go up. You got helium or some shit.
Yes, it's...
The other point I wanted to clarify was I don't want people to think that we don't pull on our fish. Just because you have a light drag doesn't mean we're not pulling on fish. It's not just let that fish do whatever it wants until it's basically killed itself from fighting and then bring it in. You can have a light drag and pull on fish.
You can watch our video. We put our fish in the net in a hurry.
Yes. Yeah, watch the video. Matt and I used to talk about, if people aren't aware, how we fish and how Matt and I were taught to fish when we came out here by Jeremy and Chris and all the other guys that had a big influence on us, is team fishing, right? It's two people walking up a bank, one guy's fishing, the other guy's watching. And you fish for a minute, 2 minutes, whatever your time period is, then you switch. You get to see a lot more flies, colors, profiles, all the thing. It's working together, and it's really fun, because then when you catch a fish, you get to share that moment with your friend, and that's cool. Matt and I think we got it down, our average land time was 7 seconds for a streamer fish. We're fishing 12-pound. Sure as shit didn't catch any 12-pound brown trout. But you hook that fish, if you can get him into the top of the column, 12-pound maxima, you can get that fish in a hurry. Especially because we're hooking them. I
would say for the average cat, you guys fish a lot.
That's fast.
And you're on foot, you're not in a boat. In a boat, you'll never do that, because you're
and that's the other thing, is we're fishing 12 feet away from us.
Yeah, you're on the small stuff, and you're fishing close. And even big fish they don't
big
fight.
Fish don't fight.
No, that's, you want a fight, you want a 16 to 20, 21 maybe. And then The really big ones are just.
Even then, I swear, like the 16-inch rainbow is the hardest fighting fish in the world.
It's like a steelhead, 11-pound hen.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah.
You know? But I would say if anyone and most fish, if it takes you 30 seconds, if you're good, something's wrong. I mean, that's a long fight. And people always say, I hear it in the shop, 5-10 times a day. I fought that thing for a half hour. Well, your fish is dead. He's dead before. I mean, he's dead on the line. I mean, they aren't going to fight for a half hour, and I don't care how big it is. But it's kind of counterintuitive to enjoy the fight. But the fight doesn't mean just stand there like a lump on a coal. It means just be active and understand. We could do this all day, talking about angles and how you accentuate the fish's movement and have continuation of the movement to get it to you. It's just what it is. It's how you fight a fish. But 7 seconds could be, I could see that very easily with a skilled angler.
Especially in this where we're fishing close to each other.
12-pound test and all that stuff, and you're putting it, and it's much better, and you don't lose as many fish. But Dougie Pauline had a thing. Dougie was a Top Gun co-pilot guy. He's got a degree in, chemical engineering or some shit, really smart guy. But he guided for us for a long time. But he has a theory about exponential loss after a certain second. And I think it's 30.
Yeah.
That you have your loss percentages just start exponentially growing after every so many seconds and it seems that you may think you had the fish on for 5 minutes, but indeed you probably a minute, which is 30 seconds too long.
Yes.
And so, but in a boat you have to, because then your angles are different and you're drifting with your fish and you don't get a chance. But
the boat.
I would say safely that if you exceed 30 seconds, things are getting different.
Bad. Yeah. Matt and I were fishing up from Reynolds one evening, and they were just eating the living shit out of it. I mean, it was a ridiculous day. I think they were eating yellow. Didn't matter. Yellow anything. And we're coming up, and we see this guy on the other side of the bank in Prick Slick, and he hooks this fish, and he's looking over at us like, oh, it's a big one. And we're just like, whatever, right? We hooked, fought, and landed 4 fish while this guy's getting towed downstream.
Yeah.
And we're just like, dude, he can't hear us, right? Maybe he could. But we're like, hey, you got to pull on that fish. That thing's going to be dead. Land the thing. If it gets down below you, it's sitting in that pool down below him.
That's part of that panic.
Walk down to it.
Well, that's part of that panic of setting up and just freezing up, not staring at the fish. Where is he? Why is he sitting in the middle of the river? Because you don't have any tension on him. The line's below your fish. You don't even know it. And he's just sitting there slowly going upstream anyway, and you don't get it. But that's just experience. But it's amazing how many very experienced anglers don't get fighting fish.
Right.
And they just, everything's about just stand there, don't do anything, don't just kind of stand there. And if it does come your way, reel a little bit, and then they feel you reeling and they turn and go the other way and you're like, and your hands go up and line goes out. And that's just experience. But we could do that on some of our fish, where we could go in and we could time. It's very easy for us to go and look at our video.
Look at it,
and
for us, the royal
see how long,
Us, the royal us.
Yeah, you get done. So it would be very simple to do that.
Yeah, it would be easy to go look at and time out. My guess is, the boat adds some time, right? Because especially if you're hooking these fish at 30 feet instead of 10 feet, then it's time
if it's
that fish has to come back.
8-pound fish or something like that, it can actually drag you around a little bit. But I still don't think, I bet you it's still on my biggest steelhead ever was a 44, and it was with Mike and Jerry on the Kispiox. And I'll bet you I landed that fish. It did make the fatal error of jumping twice. Jumps just take it out of them. But I'll bet Mike's going, yo, what are you doing? You're gonna break him up. And I bet I landed that fish in 20 seconds.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
He did dumb stuff. He jumped and pulled his head at me and he ran to shore. Yeah. And then he came to shore and I was tight on him the whole thing. He got really close and he went around. I circled his head back to the shore again. And he does a lazy ass flop again, and boom. But his head was pointing at me and I just put the pressure to his head and he swam right up to shore.
Tail him?
I didn't have to. He ran on to shore. I mean, if your tension's where it belongs and you redirect the fish, it's the whole idea of judo and aikido and all the slow arts to continue your momentum and hit the ground, right? Have one of those guys grab you and watch your ass hit the ground and go, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
Same way it does with the trout. Perfect world, we got a little bigger brain than the trout, right? Never worked for me. I just got my ass kicked all the time. But they would, the same thing. You continue the fish's momentum, and the whole time I can hear Mike screaming at me, I'm an idiot, and here's the fish on the shore, and he's done. Yeah. I mean, he hit the shore, and I grabbed his tail, but it was over. Right. And it wasn't, until a fish gets out of control, once it's below you, you're done. It's just, you've lost the battle when it's below you. Now it's just a hope. But
now it's run downstream and get blown.
Well, you do what you can. Yeah. If you can't run, you're not going to run on the babine.
No, and I say run.
You free spool the thing. Yeah. Just get that thing slight tension so he doesn't feel you, and it'll turn around. Otherwise, you're just drowned in the fish. It's a mile below you. But the thing about people that aren't hip to it is how much you can influence that. Yeah. How much you can influence the continuation of the fish's movement, how if you aren't panicked, you can turn the fish in midair. If you're not panicked, you actually see what he's going to do. You can see your line thing, you can see what's happening. But most people kind of get this glazed over look out there, and like I say, they're planning exits instead of just totally. And another thing about staring at your fish, in particular little tiny fish, how often you will, if you stop looking at that fish on a little one, we talk about this in something else. If you've got a little fish, when you look around it, you'll see a big brown trout wanting to eat it. It's very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. The last thing I want to say was something I heard on Andy Mills' podcast years ago that always stuck with me. He was talking about how he's able to land, let's say it's a 120-pound tarpon, which takes the average, somewhat experienced saltwater angler 2 hours to land. He can do it in 20 minutes. Yeah. And one, he learned how to pull 12 pounds. He's got that rig, and look up Andy Mill. He's got this rig in his garage where he knows exactly how hard he can pull when he's tournament fishing with a 12-pound test. Two, you break the fish's mind, not their body. You don't tire out their body. I mean, those fish will pull until they die. Salmon will do it. I mean, every fish will do it. You break their mind, you can get them in a lot faster. And that's just, don't give them an inch. It's a little different in the trout world, but it's like when that fish runs, it turns, pull like hell. Let them know who's boss.
Well, that's part of the turning the fish in the air.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily breaking his mind. It's the fish. We have to go on the lake and do this so we can see all of it, right? But if you can turn the fish, and again, Andy Mill practiced learning to do that. Yep. What do I always talk about? We don't practice fishing. The only way you can learn to turn a fish's head in air is you got to do it. You have to go and actually sacrifice a fish possibly, because if you go like this, you might break. I don't know how. You couldn't break your line. You're never going to break your line.
You might break the hook.
But you'd have to really jack it. I mean, you'd have to be on 5X or something, but hell, with 4X, you can just turn them so easy. But that's practicing your craft. But part of that steel that I was talking about, that one on the babine, the Kispiox, that fish jumped and I turned his head and he swam to shore. And then he swam and he turned. He was going to turn this way, which I accentuated, and he spun around a circle, but then he wanted to go upstream again, and he got it again. And he did this lazy-ass roll. This time he got backwards. He went 3 directions, and he never had any, it wasn't part of his agenda. Yeah, he didn't, and he basically just swam up on shore. He was disoriented maybe, I don't know. He's like, what the hell's going on? But it's, the key there is that what you said. Andy Mill, who's done this more than anybody successfully in the world, practiced, learning. Now, he's in his garage, for God's sakes. That should tell you something. This person is driven beyond belief that he's in his garage pulling against a scale.
I mean, he made an entire contraption to practice fishing.
Bingo.
How many people do that?
So the average cat goes out 2 hours. Wow, I can't imagine that. That's on what, 100 plus?
I want to say it was 120. I can't remember the details, but that sounds about right.
I've seen close to hundreds, but didn't spend much time with it. The biggest one I ever saw, a shark ate right at our boat, but at night when they were reaching for it.
That's badass.
It's on Fly Fish TV. It's Jimmy Teeny and Bruce Chard, and they reach over and this freaking mako or hammerhead, eats it right out of their hand. It's dark. You don't see the fish coming.
Yeah, it's scary.
The boat goes, it's like a 20-footer. It's like, oh boy, I'm not good with that night shit. Not in the salt water. But
one of the other, something that just made me crack up, I remember we were out filming once, and I can't remember where we were, but you hooked into like a 14-inch fish, thing skyrockets, and you do I think you thought it was a bigger fish than it was right after the eat. Thing jumps and you do pull that thing. If it's a small enough fish, you can actually get it a lot closer to you.
Yeah, like 10, 15 feet if you do it wrong.
It was like, the thing like launched past you towards the bank and you go relocation program, whoops.
Everybody should try it. They should just try it.
Yeah, especially if you have a 10-inch fish that you want to get in, because sometimes those little fish do pull like hell, especially if you're nymphing or whatever.
I find them a little more difficult in the respect that I have a harder time. They're so spastic.
Oh, crazy.
I have a harder time telling when they're going to airborne. Yeah. Big fish, and I admit it's a hard thing when you've got a really big fish on, but I did it on one of those hunt for the 30 fish. He jumped up and he got his head turned in midair.
Yeah.
And he was 27, maybe 6, I don't know. But you have to have the composure to do it.
And that just comes with time. Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't.
And if you can fish bass, if you have bass, because especially smallies, if you can get where they're smallies, they jump so much. Yeah. And that's when I probably started doing that with smallmouth before I did trout.
Yeah.
But that was gear. That was a lot of times, But and in midair, you just pull the thing up. Midair, you just come back on him, and he swims right to you. So how hard is that to figure out? Line's behind him, or right under your boat.
Or right.
That really puts an exclamation point on the fact that has no idea you're there.
Yeah,
it's going under you to hide.
Yes. Yeah, they're not intelligent beings, nor is the dog that just walked in.
She's been in and out 3 times. Good.
All right, well, I think this is a great place to end episode 11, I believe it is. Once again, like, subscribe, comment, questions, all that stuff. YouTube, Instagram, slidein.com.
All the above.
All the above. Trying to think if there was anything else.
And lots of more comments on what we should do.
Yeah, more comments. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what we started this one off with? We were supposed to talk about why we dropped Sims.
Why did we drop Sims?
Well, get into that next show.
Why does anybody care why we dump Sims?
Come back next week, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it helps you out.